if I just quickly give you a project outline for the Dyffryn Tywi Tirwedd Hanes Ein Bro project. It's basically a valley-wide project that covers the middle part of the Tywi Valley between Llandilo and Carmarthen. We're funded through the Welsh Government's Sustainable Management Scheme, and it's really about how we look after our local landscape now and for the future to benefit the valley's environment and its people. So the character of the Tywi Valley within the project area. So our project area basically runs from Llandilo to Carmarthen, and it covers the sort of catchment of the Tywi. But it's been defined historically by traditional farming and land management practices. And the project aims to support this very distinctive local environment by promoting and encouraging a better understanding of our past relationship with nature. So how people cared for the land and the influence of traditional farming practice on the development of the landscape that we see today. So our three key focus areas, it was an incredibly wide brief, but we've decided that we're probably going to get most sort of output and outcome if we focus on three areas. So these are all traditional land management, typical of this area in the past. So we've decided to focus on hedgerows, meadows and parkland, and the aim is to show how understanding this past local land management can actually inform current and future practice, and that reviving and using traditional skills more widely can benefit the environment. So it's actually a partnership project, and our network partners are Cadw. We've got quite a lot of them. We've got Cadw, Campaign for the Protection of Rural Wales, Carmarthenshire County Council, Dyfed Archaeological Trust, Gellhire Trust, Keep Wales Tidy, which was the Long Forest project, Llais y Goedwig, National Botanic Garden of Wales, who are our lead partner and our hosts, National Trust at Dynefo, Natural Resources Wales, the landscape branch, Hugh Jones at Penpal Farm, the Wildlife Trust of South and West Wales, the Tywi Centre, which is based near Llandilo and is a traditional building centre, the Tywi Gateway Project, and the Welsh Historic Gardens Trust. So lots and lots of network partners. We've had different sort of levels of engagement from them, and I think everybody's struggling a little bit with how things are under the current restrictions with COVID. But in the meantime, we've been trying to achieve as much as we possibly can under the current circumstances. We have a website which is really nearly ready to go live, and it's going to have a really exciting sort of interactive GIS map so that people can search the natural and cultural landscape of the Tywi Valley within the project area. And we'd love CAVS and the network to sort of push and promote this when we actually go live with it, which should be sort of early to mid-June, hopefully. Yes, we're really hoping that will be done by then. So we've done quite a lot of training in various land management techniques. We've done basic hedge laying, we've done chainsaw maintenance and felling. This is all for the network partnership and local landowners and land managers, and also we have 2 apprentices on the project, both of whom are very interested in pursuing careers in landscape management, basically. So they've both done their chainsaw maintenance and felling. We've done invasive non-native species, which I'm not sure if everybody knows what invasive non-native species are, but they're a significant issue within the Tywi Valley because we've got a huge number of them and they threaten our sort of local biodiversity. So it's really quite important that we have a sort of management, an overarching management strategy to deal with those. We're in the process of doing a series of scything training events, so associated with traditional meadow management. We're doing a conservation grazing course at Gellhire on Friday. We're also planning to do conservation on the farm for local farmers, first aid with forestry, because obviously once people are wielding chainsaws, they need to be well trained to look after each other and themselves whilst they're doing that. And we're planning to do a stock checker course later in the year. Aside from that, we've instigated a series of landscape scale sort of interventions at network partner sites. So at Gellhire, we've, alongside the hedge laying training that we've done there, so we've you might be able to actually see that sort of driving up and down the road on the south side of the Tywi Valley. There's a stretch of hedgerow that's been laid next to the East Lodge. So that was one of our training courses that did that. So we've got a local hedge layer, Malcolm Edwards, involved in doing the training and doing hedge laying for us. We've also put some of our funds towards dealing with ash dieback at Gethiar as well, which is another big issue sort of within the environment of the Tywi Valley. At Dynefor, we're in the process of doing hedgerow restoration and are creating a super hedge there, which will be a lot wider and thicker and bushier and brilliant for biodiversity within the parkland or just sort of around the edges of the parkland at Dynefor. At National Botanic Gardens, we're running a hedgerows for biodiversity project. All of these things have really, not long been instigated, and once our website goes live, we will be getting bits of information. So anybody who's interested can kind of, you'll be able to get in touch with us, but also you'll be able to see what we're doing and the outcomes of the project on the website as well. At Castle Woods, so this is also Dynefor, but it's an area that's managed and looked after by the Wildlife Trust of South and West Wales, who are a network partner. We're in the process of installing some cleft chestnut fencing for the wildlife walk through the Triple SI at Castle Woods. We've also commissioned 2 research projects. So Gronwy Wyn, who is a botanist and author, has done some plant name research for us on the local Welsh names for meadow plants. And we've also had Rob Parry from the Initiative for Nature Conservation Cymru do some research into the location of areas of species-rich grassland within the Tywi Valley. And we're also commissioning research into historic locations of meadows in the Dyffryn Tywi project area. I'm aware that's really quite a lot of information all in one go. I don't know whether anybody wants to sort of put their cameras back on and ask me any specific questions about the project, because I'd be happy to answer.
Can I just ask when the project started and when it's going to finish?
Yes, okay. Basically, we started in February of last year, at which point we got closed down pretty much straight after because of COVID. We are due to finish in January 2022, so we have to have all our project activities and finished and closed by then. So we've really only been operating since about August, when we came back off furlough of last year. So we're trying to cram in a lot of work in quite a short space of time. So yes.
So basically your website is going to be like a showcase for what you've achieved, really, is that?
It very much is. Yeah, it's a legacy, and it's going to be hopefully, a sort of ongoing resource for people who want to kind of understand the natural and cultural landscape of the Tywi Valley, and how the two are sort of fundamentally interrelated. And I think one of the things that this project really wants to do is to try and ensure that, in amongst our drive to sort of improve the environment and help the environment at a local level, we kind of don't forget that we have, thousands of years worth of sort of local cultural history, which is fundamental to how the landscape was managed. And so, that there are really valuable lessons from the past that we can kind of bring to bear on some of the current environmental issues that we're facing, and things like, hedgerow management in a traditional way, meadow management in a traditional way. Although we're not, we're by no means looking at the past with sort of rose-tinted spectacles, but we do feel that there's a lot to learn from how things were managed, in the local area, really until very recently. I mean, I remember meadows being cut for hay when I was little and growing up in Llandysville, and that's in the sort of late 70s, early 80s. So it's really not very long ago that we've kind of lost all this from the landscape, and so quite crucial to how we manage the environment locally for the future. So yeah.
Just a shout out for Carmarthenshire Bird Club. I'm not sure what provision you're making for monitoring local bird life, but Adam Dare, one of the people who runs Carmarthen Bird Club, is very, very knowledgeable, is very patient as well in terms of he's picked me up on quite a few things that I've got wrong. For example, down by the river in Llandilo, I thought I saw a pair of nesting grebes, but apparently they were gooseanders. I've seen at least one pair of kingfishers down there. So yeah, I don't know what, because you've not mentioned birds, whether you're actually doing
only largely because we have so much to say. I mean, the fundamental idea of this project is to, to promote and encourage local biodiversity, and to sort of do that within the context of the historic landscape. But obviously, birds and local wildlife are a really important element of our project, and so we're very happy to make kind of connections with local bird clubs and things like that. And if there's we've also got, I don't know whether you're aware of somebody called Emma Reardon, who writes a local blog about Tywi Valley wildlife, but she's written a blog for us about her sort of experiences of wildlife in the Tywi Valley. But if anybody else wants to be involved, hopefully it will get easier once our website is up and running. So we'd be very happy to have anybody who's interested and has sightings of rarities and things like that. I think that would be fantastic. I mean, it's such a vast project, and I think one of the problems that we're struggling with is kind of condensing it down into the potential for doing more with things like woodlands, for doing more with water quality, for soil quality. It's vast, and we've realized that basically within the space of a year and a bit we can't do everything, but we're hoping to kind of set the foundations for this being a bit of a hub for local interest and sort of biodiversity. And also cultural history. And really, as a legacy, our website, what we've done is we've allocated funding to kind of keep it maintained and supported for the time following our project end, and also the GIS system that goes with it, which should mean that people can kind of search local records and things like that through it. So yeah, we're really hoping that it's kind of going to have this legacy within the landscape. So yeah.
Thank you.
Biodiversity, encouraging biodiversity. Who are you encouraging to be biodiverse? Do you go around and talk to the landowners?
Yeah, I mean, it's something else that's been quite a lot more of a challenge than it would have been under normal circumstances. But what we really want to do is to engage the farming community, because in fact, and we've got a few people on board who are very enthusiastic and keen to sort of help with the project. I think under normal circumstances we would run a lot more sort of open days and got people in to kind of tell us about their experiences and get a feel for the level of knowledge and understanding and where we could really sort of target things. But in actual fact, what we've ended up with is a situation where we can't really have any meetings and get-togethers, and farmers are, renownedly reserved about sort of online platforms and things, although I understand that they're generally using them a bit more now. But really that has been the challenge, and in fact the people that we need to be looking after this landscape are the people who manage the land. And so with our partnership, we've got land managers on board. But what we really need to do, and what we could, I suppose, use help with if anybody has connections locally, is getting the local farming community on board. And it's certainly before the end of the project, if restrictions are eased over the summer, it's certainly one of the ambitions of the project to kind of get local farmers a little bit more. Oh yes, we are. Yeah, we're planning to run a conservation on the farm course as part of the project as well. But I think it's a big project. We want the community to be involved, and particularly, you know, sort of local farmers and land managers, you know, in terms of their interface with the landscape. I think that's really who we'd like to be encouraging. And I'm very aware that we can't do everything through this project, but what we'd like to do is kind of encourage engagement and kind of, I suppose, make people feel that this is part of their sort of cultural inheritance, and that actually looking after the landscape was something we were doing really quite successfully until about 50 years ago. So you know, we're not far away from that, and if we can just take some lessons from, you know, how we were doing things, then that might help substantially. So
the government are actually looking at how to give grants to farmers that aren't using pesticides, that are using natural resources. So that is on its way, and farmers are looking at different ways in which that they can grow crops. I mean, I know quite, you know, Carmarthenshire is quite hefty on agriculture rather than, you know, growing crops on herds of cattle and sheep.
Yeah.
But there are new incentives for farmers to rewild their land as well, aren't there, with ponds and wildlife?
Yeah, I think one of the things we have to be very, very careful of is this idea of rewilding in the context of a landscape that has been managed agriculturally for thousands of years. And I'm completely aware of the need to kind of promote, you know, the sort of rewilding ethos for the sake of biodiversity. But what we can, within this landscape framework, I think what we can do is suggest that we already have brilliant material to work with. So we've already got these fantastic hedgerows. I mean, hedgerows are very, very typical of Carmarthenshire. And because we have a lot of sort of big dairy farmers on the floor of the Tywi Valley, this incredibly sort of flat, fertile area, which has traditionally always been used for dairying, you know, and so what we can't do is suggest that they completely forget about the dairying and start doing something else. We've got to encourage people to actually sort of work with what we've got, and by demonstrating, you know, that we've got this kind of landscape that we can be proud of, and that there's this historical precedent. But we were managing it in quite a different way, you know, before we were flailing hedges every year, before we were, you know, managing land for silage rather than haymaking. And so the decline in biodiversity, as far as I can see, is, you know, directly, you know, it's sort of an index of, you know, the decline of traditional land management, as in working alongside nature and living with that landscape rather than just living off it, sort of thing. So,
do you think there's any potential for future funding for that project, or do you think there'll be spin-off projects?
Well, I think, yeah, I mean, if anybody's aware of funding avenues that we can look at, I mean, I'm really, you know, one of the things that's very sad about this project is that it is a project all about sustainability. And if we have to stop suddenly in January 2022, that doesn't make it terribly sustainable. Okay, so yes. Jackie's just said heritage lottery funding, and it's one of the avenues that we will be looking into. Luckily, we're based at the National Botanic Garden of Wales, and we have somebody who we're meeting with tomorrow who will be discussing potentially future funding to keep the project going. Because I think once we've generated the website and once we've got the interest of, you know, farmers, and we're starting to encourage people, it will, you know, it would be a terrible thing just to have to stop. And Kelly and I have both said to ourselves that, you know, if we do stop getting funding in January, we'll just kind of, perhaps we'll keep updating the website, and we'll keep, you know, we just need to move it forward, because I think the only way that we're going to resolve environmental issues locally is by encouraging people rather than kind of waving a stick. It's kind of the carrot approach rather than the stick approach, you know, and getting people to sort of feel an ownership of the landscape. Something which has got to be a kind of a mind shift, really, and a sort of a bit of a kind of cultural change. And again, I think we have only lost this in the past sort of 50 to 70 years, really. And so hopefully, you know, by encouraging this sort of recognition of the importance culturally of meadows and hedgerows and haymaking and you know, hedge laying competitions and things like that, you know, perhaps we will bring back that kind of that pride in the landscape, and you know, reawakening that sort of understanding of the landscape as well. So yeah, we're aiming high in in a fairly short space of time.